Cheers to another episode of the Weinnotes Podcast. I'm your guide, AJ Weinzettel, on this journey of stories showcasing the people behind the wonderful world of wine, where we dive into conversations ranging from terroir, viticulture, to favorite music, superpowers, and more. Please enjoy this episode of the Weinnotes Podcast. Kelsey, thank you so much for taking time to be on the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah.
For you to be here.
Yes, I'm very happy to be here as well. This interview is going to be a little bit different than, my other interviews. Last year I did a blind tasting interview with Capers Cafe, and I thought we would kind of do the same.
Sounds fun.
All right. Well, the first wine that I have is not going to be a blind wine, but starting off with sparkling, I think is always a good thing to do.
Always.
Okay.
So we start every meal at Arden, dinner.
That's the way to do it.
Who doesn't? Oh, I'm so excited you brought this because I have actually not tried this yet. I was talking about it yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Kinney and
Opa.
That's why we put our hands over it.
Yeah.
Kinney and Allison from Arabilis.
Mm-hmm.
They are amazing. Kinney has a PhD in freaking sparkling.
What does that even mean?
Like, he studied the effects of sugar in sparkling for his PhD.
What?
Yes.
That's amazing.
It is amazing.
Is that in? I didn't know you can even get like a viticultural PhD. Is that like a biochemistry major or something, or is that like a viticulture degree? That's pretty cool.
It is very cool. So I've been following Kinney and Allison since 2021, and just recently he released his sparkling. So this is the very first release of his sparkling, coming out of the Eola Amity Hills.
Is it all three traditional grapes?
So this one is 60% Pinot Noir, 30% Chardonnay, and 3% Pinot Blanc.
Cool.
Yeah.
So technically one of the allowed grapes, just not Meunier.
Yeah, not Meunier. Yeah. So it's just amazing people.
Yeah.
And amazing wines, and just I can't wait to see what they do.
I've heard really, really wonderful things and have followed them on social, and I was at Cho yesterday.
Right.
And someone brought them up about how much they love their sparkling. And I was like, I haven't tried it yet.
So there you go.
Perfect. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very nice.
Yeah. He does amazing work.
It's like just the right amount of richness, like a little bit of toastiness, a little bit of like creamy, lazy thing, but it's not over the top.
Mm-hmm.
We did a dinner at Arden recently, and we were comparing French and Arden wines, and we started with a local sparkling from Flaneur, which was like their 2016 Blanc de Blanc, and it had spent, I think, almost like 3.5 years on the lees.
Right.
And then we drank it opposite. I'm blanking on the name. Oh no, it was from, oh my gosh, was it Mousset, the producer? It was also a Blanc de Blanc, and it was from clay soils in the Marne.
Right.
But the whole point is that it was, if you had just tasted them blind, you would have assumed that the Flaneur was champagne, and the other one, the champagne, would have been maybe an Oregon style. It was like very lean and very racy and didn't have a lot of those like toasty brioche things. And it's just like really fascinating looking at the sparkling styles coming out of Oregon. Like, they really range across the board.
They do. And it's amazing to see, and the amount of sparkling that's coming about is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
With the Arabilis, they just opened up their winery in Eola Amity. Awesome. And they have the equipment, to actually do the bottling for sparkling themselves.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and they're going to be helping out other people. Have you heard of De La Boue?
No, I haven't. De La Boue. Oh.
Yes. So they have some great Pinot Noir, little bit of Chardonnay, some Syrah.
Yep.
And Kinney is helping them with their first sparkling.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I finally went and checked out Corollary's new tasting room, which is just so stunning.
Yes.
And I know I think they're still the only sparkling only project.
Lionel Barnett is also sparkling only.
And I guess Malin Meyer
Yeah.
unless they've started making still wines as well.
Not to my knowledge, but yeah.
Have you had the new Andrew's new Missoula Flood sparkling project? I should have brought a bottle of that.
No, I have.
Okay.
I sat down with him. The hummingbird.
Yes.
Oh
I know.
my gosh.
I know.
And I think he was saying there was no dosage in that one.
All three of them have I think one has none, which I think you're probably right, is the hummingbird, and the other two are like 2 grams and 3 grams. They're very, very low.
Very low. Oh, yeah.
I love that project.
I do too. I tried to get some bottles and poof, they were gone.
I know. Well, him and Matthias, who's his partner in that project, who's based in Santa Barbara, I think.
Right.
And they also have a Chardonnay project coming up too, which I'm excited about. So there's too many new projects to be excited about in Oregon.
Way too many good ones.
This is lovely.
Yes, it is. I thoroughly enjoy it. I have to tell you, the first interaction I had with Arden, yes, was August of 2020.
Okay.
And you were
Is
doing...
this the wine dinner at Flaneur?
There you go.
That's burnt, the one with the rain?
Yeah.
You were there?
I was there.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Tell me your experience of that night.
Oh it was amazing. I mean, come on, it is 2020, right? And getting out into the world was rare.
Yeah.
And just to get out and be amongst people was amazing. The rain, luckily we had an umbrella over the table, and it was fine. It was great. I mean, I have zero complaints.
People were such troopers. I told that story like 3 days ago because it was such a formative memory of the pandemic.
Right.
Because people would never react that way now. Because, we planned this big dinner out in wine country because we're like, oh my gosh, we can do a wine dinner because Flaneur had just opened their beautiful patio.
Right.
But it'll be outside. We'll be following the rules. Hadn't rained all summer. So hot. It was right before those fires.
Yeah.
And as soon as we got there and as soon as the first guest arrived, you remember the skies just opened. And it wasn't like a light rain. It was a downpour.
Yes.
And people were just like, oh, it's fine. We're sitting there and their wine glasses were just full of rain. And then we started trying to sneak people inside, breaking the rules. And there would be someone sitting on the stairs, someone in an office chair. We were trying to space everybody out.
You got to do what you got to do at that point. Yeah.
It was fun though.
It was a very fun dinner.
Stressful but fun.
I'm sure it's very stressful in your end. I have no doubt about that.
But that was your first interaction with Arden.
Yes, that was my very first.
Did you hear about us through Flaneur?
No, it was, I don't know how. It was just kind of through social media.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like, hey, we're going to do this. Oh, we have, some people, that are sick, so we're, shutting down. And it was just a roller coaster.
Well, I mean, people were still figuring out who had, we were getting on people's radar for those 2 years leading up because we opened in March of 2018.
Right.
And our second anniversary was the week of shutdown. We had anniversary specials planned. And of course, those did not happen. But I think it was sort of to our credit that we didn't really know what we were doing yet because we were able to just be really flexible.
Right.
So yeah, now it's we've had more time post-pandemic than pre-pandemic, which is kind of crazy.
It was crazy, but that's also, it worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very fortunate to make it through the pandemic.
We never actually closed except for the 2 weeks that we all got COVID.
Right. Oh, that has to be hard.
And people were so nice about it because it was June of 2020 before we were the first wave of COVID achievers.
Yeah.
And so it was still kind of scary. There was no vaccine and everyone was so worried and reaching out and kind. And now people say they have COVID and you're like, ugh, how soon can you come to work? You put on a mask.
Yeah. No, and it's, I wish it'd go away, but I don't think it will.
Mm-hmm. I hate spitting sparkling wine because it makes me sad.
Mm-hmm.
It's so delicious.
It is. So the name Arden, comes from, Shakespeare. When did the first time that you came across As You Like It,
Mm-hmm.
did you read it? Were you watching it? How old were you? Like, what was it that captured you?
I have always had a special place in my heart for Shakespeare. The entire top of my bookshelf is all Shakespeare plays. And I don't know what it was from a young age. And my hippie friends were like, "Did you have a past life in Elizabethan England?" And I don't know. But I just grew up reading and going to the theater and watching the Wishbone version of Romeo and Juliet. And I always just loved Shakespeare.
Right.
And I was a theater major in college. And the first time I did As You Like It, to your point, was in high school. I was a member of a local theater community called Northwest Classical Theater Company.
Right.
And for the last 2 years that I was in high school, I did like Shakespeare plays around the clock with them. And it was actually, ironically, it was on Grant, the house I just bought a house.
Oh, wow.
The street I just bought a house on, but way down in the industrial area.
Right.
Tiny little theater. And we did lots of different Shakespeare plays, and we did As You Like It one summer in the park. And I just always associate that play with this kind of like dreamy summer vacation. I mean, it's a play about escape,
Right.
you know, and Rosalind, the heroine, is trying to get away from some like bad things in her life, and the court, which is kind of, you know, symbolic of general city life, I think.
Right.
You know, the hustle and bustle and stress and corruption of like these big cities. And she runs away with her best girlfriend and dresses up like a boy, because that's what you got to do to get by in that world, maybe
Right.
this world too. And they end up in this mystical forest called the Forest of Arden, where everyone's just living their best life, like writing poetry in the trees and playing music and just like having a good time. And she kind of falls in love there and starts this new life and like finds her own feet again. And so I just always loved the symbolism of that. And it was always a play that I thought was like about girl power a little bit,
Yeah.
a lot of it, and about, yeah, I think the importance of like escaping and finding somewhere to rejuvenate. And when we started talking about the idea for Arden, so much of it was like an emphasis on the amazing bounty that we have around us in the Pacific Northwest and featuring things that grow here that we're so lucky to have, you know, everything from grapes to vegetables to the animals to the seafood.
Everything. I mean, you can live off the land up here in the Pacific Northwest.
And you can't do that everywhere.
No, you can't.
But we were like in the city, you know, we're like right in the Pearl District. And
Right.
so, gosh, we threw around a lot of different names. And I feel like that's been a recurring theme in my life. When I need to name something, I just start looking through Shakespeare movies. All my cats, like everything I've ever named, I think probably has some relation to a Shakespeare play. And yeah, somehow I was like, oh my gosh, what about Arden? And it just kind of like clicked.
Right.
So yeah.
No, that's awesome.
And at the time, I don't even think we had hired, because we've had 2 chefs in our lifetime.
Yeah, it's Shakespeare.
Yeah, Chef Sarah was there with us for the first year, and
Right.
you know, so at the time it was like I was running the wine and she was running the food, and I was like, oh, it's fitting. It's, you know, some women running stuff, you
Yeah,
know?
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And oh my gosh, I didn't realize that
I know, Chef Sarah.
Yeah,
Say it 3
why
times.
am I having a hard time saying that? I didn't know that she worked for you at first. I knew that she was in Soder, and that's how I was first introduced to her.
Yeah.
And then to follow her career, you know, to top chef.
She moved up here to help us open Arden. So to make a very long story short, but we had the wine bar Thelonious before Arden.
Right.
And that was getting really popular, and we didn't have a kitchen. We really wanted to like serve the full experience of food and wine.
Right.
And the Arden space became available. So we just posted an ad in Portland for a chef for a wine bar, essentially. And she applied to that position. Like, we hadn't posted it nationally, but she was looking to move up to Portland. At the time, she was still the CDC at Octavia, which had a Michelin star. Before that, she had been at Mr. Jew, where they had also gotten a star. And Alex and I, my ex-business partner and I, when her resume came in, we were like, oh, wow. And we flew down to San Francisco, I think that next weekend, and ate at Octavia and met her.
Right.
And because we were doing construction, she came up a couple times, helped us design the kitchen, and then moved up like right as we were ready to go. So it was like a process of a couple months of like getting the space ready, her wrapping up her life in San Francisco,
Right.
moving up here, and then we opened the restaurant together.
Wow.
It was
That's
an
amazing.
adventure.
And now you have a new, well, not a new chef. He's been around for a little bit.
Yeah, so Sarah was only there for like the first year, a year and change. And
Mhm.
Eric started in July of 2019. And then he's been there, he just had his 5-year anniversary.
Right.
And
Wow.
he's now an owner as of January 1st of this year, which I'm so thrilled about.
That's
Because
amazing.
I love him. And he just like makes running a restaurant as pleasant as it could be.
And that's great. And if I did my research correctly, like everybody, once Sarah left,
Yeah.
everybody was like, you need to talk to Eric.
I know.
And like, it just kind of like was
Yeah.
meant to be.
I know, and we got so lucky. Like a couple of people that we already had on the team at Arden had already worked with Eric, and he had, he has a very pedigreed Portland history, but he was at Gotham, which was like a haunt in and of itself, kind of this legendary place where everyone worked. And then he opened Pigeon with Gabe and was his right hand man there for 5 years.
Right.
And Little Bird was basically his project for the next 5 years. And after he had Taylor Railworks, his own restaurant, which was a tough location, restaurants are still struggling down there. He was kind of consulting at different places, and we found him when he was at the BCB, but it was only ever supposed to be a consulting position. And so we were able to like woo him over, and it did just seem meant to be.
Right.
And the funny thing is, like, people love to work with Eric. Like, cooks I think most of the cooks we've had come through have followed him from like 3 or 4 different restaurants.
Wow.
And the joke is like, they'll leave to go do something else, but they always come back. Which, maybe has something to do with Arden, but I think it has a lot to do with Eric.
Yeah. I'm sure it has to do with everything.
Hopefully with everything.
Everything. Yeah. No, to me, there aren't a whole lot of restaurants in Portland that hold wine and food in the same caliber.
Yeah.
And that's, I thoroughly appreciate that.
And it's hard to define for people because when we first opened, the full name was Arden Wine Bar and Kitchen. But people, all they heard was wine bar. And so for the first couple years, we would have people come in and be like, oh my gosh, you're a full restaurant? We thought you were just a wine bar. Because we opened right around the same time that a lot of other wine bars in town did.
Right.
Yes, Canard, which of course is more of a full restaurant too, but Dame, Bar Norman, what's the one attached? Tekka. And so I think people just thought, oh, wine bar, not restaurant.
Right.
And so after the first year, we're like, let's just chop those modifiers off the name and it's just Arden.
Makes it so much simpler.
Because in my mind, if you care about wine, your wine program should just be just as robust as your food program.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Should we move on to
Sure.
another wine?
Sure.
It's going to be really hard to do this.
You can feel free to grab that too if you want.
Oh, that's okay. All right. So, we set out to have like somewhat of a theme for the blind.
Mhm.
So Oregon is known for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. So you brought Chardonnay, and I brought a Pinot,
Mhm.
but then you also brought something else that's kind of fun for Oregon,
Mhm.
and I also brought a white that's something fun for Oregon as well. So this is going to be fun.
I'm excited.
All right. Do you want to start off with your Chardonnay?
Sure. Start traditional and then
Okay.
branch out.
Yes.
Don't mind my not proper decanter. I'm
That's perfect. That
a
works.
flower vase, This is the perks of moving. I still don't know where like half of my stuff is.
That is always the fun of moving.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so this is where I get put on the spot.
Yes.
All right, so looking at the color, it looks to be a little young. So when I say young, it could be, I would say, less than 5 years old. at first sniff, it doesn't smell like a overly oaked Chardonnay. It seems very lean. And with that in my head, I'm kind of already setting myself up. It's not going to be like a huge acid bomb. I don't think. So we'll see what we get here.
I'm only spitting because I have to go to work later.
I have to go to work later on too. Okay, so wow. The finish on this is quite spectacular. It just keeps going and going and going. And yeah, it's not a huge, big acid bomb, but it has, this isn't the right descriptor, but it's almost grassy roots. I don't get a whole lot of oak, so I think this is more stainless. If I had to pick a year, I don't know.
I see what you're saying with never heard it described as grassy roots, but the fruit tastes like fresh, like not overly ripe.
Correct.
You know?
Yeah.
It's not like green, but it's fresh.
Correct. Yeah. It's definitely not a Chardonnay that I think that I have had. And okay, so I'm just going to go and take a wild guess. I know that you had Hayu recently, right? And this isn't your traditional type Chardonnay in Oregon. So I'm going to say a 2021 Hayu Chardonnay.
Okay. Well, and before I reveal, just because I've been having this conversation with people recently, says in California, how would you define a traditional type Oregon Chardonnay now in 2024?
Now in 2024, a traditional, it's everybody's using oak, right? And so you get all the just, I don't know how else to describe, but it's just classic Chardonnay, on entry, mid palate. You wait for a second, and you get the acidity level of, holy cow, this is the big ass, acidic bomb, or you get, something a little bit lighter. And I describe things in experience.
Yeah, totally.
I don't necessarily describe it in terms of fruit.
Yeah. But you're saying this feels like lighter than a traditional Oregon Chardonnay?
Yes, I would say that, yes.
Cool.
Yes.
I think that's an astute assumption. You want me to reveal it?
Sure.
Let's see which one it is. Okay. So I thought maybe you had this. This is Grant and Renee's 2022, and it's actually just their Willamette Valley. It's their old 8 cut.
Yeah.
But I love that I think for me, this is what I like to show people now as kind of like the nouveau Oregon, or what Oregon Chardonnay can be when it is lighter, when it's picked optimally and not. I think they ferment in neutral barrel and a little bit of stainless steel.
There you go. Yeah.
But I don't think there's any new oak on it.
Right.
But I just think Grant is such an awesome winemaker, and I feel like he can capture freshness without having it feel overly acidic and unpleasantly so.
Right, I agree.
And I feel like for not just, but for Willamette Valley Chardonnay, this is one of my favorite.
It is
this right now.
And the price point on that is absolutely amazing. Yeah. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but it is.
I mean, I want to say on a retail shelf, it's probably $35,
I was thinking sub 40, yeah.
Yeah, and and of course their single vineyards are incredible as well, but I like to show people, because I just think Oregon wines are getting really expensive, and I think it's amazing when you can find producers that from bottom to top, from entry level to their most fancy reserve cuvee, like I would drink this whole bottle, you know.
It's very easy to do.
It's good.
Yes, it's very good. I love what Grant and Renee do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're actually just we just signed on, or somehow I convinced him to do a Pinot Noir project with us next year for Arden. So we're gonna make a barrel of our own Arden Pinot Noir, Arden times 100 Suns, that we can pour by the glass for the next couple years.
That would be fun.
Yeah, and mainly it's gonna be an experience for the staff, because this is where I'm like, please tell us if we're overstepping, but we'll get to go out there at least once a month and be involved in critical decision-making moments, and then
Right.
be hands-on with, obviously with harvest and, you know, everything from crushing to racking to deciding on barrels to all that kind of thing.
That's a great experience. I mean, and the staff would get a better appreciation for wine, what goes into
Yeah.
it. And I don't know, I mean, I'm a nerd at heart. And so the further and further I can go down the rabbit hole, I love that.
We did a sparkling project with Grant's assistance in 2019. And he basically sold us a barrel of like base wine that he was using for flaneur,
Right.
and then kind of helped us, you know, we did tirage, we waited, then we disgorged and dosaged. And so that was like a fun
Yeah.
educational project. But I think that's great for teams. And like, I want to keep people engaged. And often in restaurants, you don't get the opportunity to like drop everything and go work harvest for 3 months.
No.
So getting to like be involved peripherally is, I think, important.
It is. You know, that hands-on training is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Well, cool. That is, I feel like I should have known better.
No. Blind tasting is, as long as you liked it, that's what matters.
Oh yeah,
right?
no, I definitely liked it. Yes, and like the finish on that, just holy cow.
Yeah.
Just keeps going on.
Well, and I think he just got like Pinot, they just got Pinot of the vintage, I believe, for like their own rooted from Decanter last week.
You know,
I'm so excited for them.
yeah, I can't keep up with all of them.
I know.
I try.
I know.
Oh, so recently, wine enthusiasts named Arden as one of the 50 best restaurants in America.
Yeah.
What were you doing at that very exact moment when you found out?
Well, so I knew we were going to be on a list for them, but I did not know what list.
Okay.
The editor had reached out like a month before and said, we're putting together a list of some restaurants, and could you provide like some photographs? So I did that, but I didn't overthink it too much. Like, you get a lot of these kind of press related things and you never want to get your hopes up too much, you know? But when it actually came out, I think I had just woken up or like got back from the gym or something, and I got all these text messages. And I was like, oh, the wine enthusiast list is out. But then I started thumbing through it, and I didn't realize it was going to be like the 50 best wine restaurants in America. And then you see we're on there with like Bouchon and Canlis and Single Thread. It was such a humbling honor.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really great.
No, that is great. Yeah. I talk to people and they're like, oh, Arden, haven't heard of that. I'm like, what? Why haven't you? You know?
It's funny because I have a lot of feelings about lists, but and ultimately they're like very formative right now in how people hear about restaurants. And it's hard. I get frustrated when we're not on certain lists, and then I get happy when we are on other lists. And, you know, like we've been really lucky to be on the Eater list for the last couple of years. And as much as I think those lists shouldn't make that much of a difference, they really do.
They do. Yeah.
So a lot of people find out about us through there, but we also have not been on a lot of we've never been on a Portland Monthly list. We're not usually on Oregonian lists, and that's fine. Like, there's so many great restaurants in Portland, but I do think a lot of people still haven't heard of us in some ways because we're on some lists and not others, as silly as that sounds.
Right.
Because that's like the primary form of like food journalism now, for better or for worse.
It is.
You know?
Yeah. All the blogs, all the media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I've tried to make our own news in some ways, like to have really robust events and collaborations and be active on social media and do a newsletter, because I think you can't rely on press to do it for you.
No, you can't. You gotta set your own destiny.
Yeah.
Yeah. And talk about collaborations. My jaw hit the floor when you have an upcoming wine dinner with Mike Etzel
And Doug
and Doug from,
Brickhouse.
oh my gosh.
I actually went out there yesterday and I sat
Oh.
down with both of them. And sorry, I did not mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Well, the idea I've done dinners with both of them separately. And
Right.
ironically, a dinner with Mike for Beaufrere was like the first wine dinner we ever did at Arden. It was the summer of 2018 that we opened. And so I've known both of them for years, and they were like always really kind and supportive when we were getting the wine shop Thelonious off the ground.
Right.
And Mike, a couple months ago, put together this like round table tasting of
Oh,
Beaufrere verticals. And I was lucky enough to be invited. And Doug was there. And it was Mike and Mikey. It was just a couple of us. And Doug and Mike are just so hilarious with one another.
I can imagine.
You know, they just are old friends
Right.
and just give each other a hard time in the best way. And I was like, have you guys ever done an event together? And they're like, no, that would be trouble. I was like, well, we could. They're like, if you want to. So I've just like kept them to it. And I've been like, can we really do that dinner? Like, what about now? What about now? So it's finally happening.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
It'll be entertaining.
It will be entertaining, but also amazing wines with amazing foods.
Yeah. And that's what we always strive for with have you been to one of our winemaker dinners?
Yet,
We'll
no.
get you in for
Yeah.
I'm working on the next couple collabs, and so we'll get you into one of them. But I try to have them be a little more educational and a little more just relaxed and conversational. I feel like a lot of wine dinners I've been to they're always great, but often it's like the food comes out, the wine gets poured, the winemaker stands up and it's like 30% whole cluster, 10% oak, picked on this date, punched down twice and boom, done. And
I'm going to sit down.
yeah, and
Exactly.
for most wine drinkers, that information doesn't mean a whole lot.
No.
And you get less of a personal connection with the winemaker. And so these dinners are very intimate. It's just 30 people. Everyone sits on long tables. And I really just try to have a conversation with the winemaker. And you really, I think the personalities of these people always shine through. Like we just had Kelly Fox, and talk about personality. She was great. I was like, Kelly, tell us a little bit about yourself and just how it's been to branch out and start this brand on your own.
Right.
And she was like, would you like me to read from Ovid or Ursula K. Le Guin? And you're like, okay, there's Kelly Fox,
Let's do this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think that's special. People
It
walk
is.
away feeling like they met that person.
And that means so much because, let's say that they, go to visit Kelly Fox. It's like, oh my gosh, I love the dinner at Arden, and there's that special connection.
Yeah.
And that only helps builds up the brands on so many levels.
I think that's why people like going wine tasting, and especially when you get to meet the winemaker, it's like the wizard behind the curtain.
Right.
Because it's one thing like seeing this beautiful bottle and your perception is like, oh, what's up with this label? And you kind of get an idea of maybe who made it.
Right.
But then you meet them, and often there's so much more humble and just quirky. And someone like Mike Etzel, who
Right.
Beaufrere is this big
Boom.
fancy winery on a pedestal.
Right.
And then you meet him and he's just the weirdest, quirkiest, most charming,
Down to earth.
down to earth.
Right.
Literally yesterday he's got holes in his clothes and actual dirt under his fingernails, and
Right. Exactly.
he's feeding crushed out. He's like stomping on apples and handing them to pigs, with his grandson. And you're like,
Right.
this is great.
It is. And that's why I like sitting down with winemakers for this, is to portray like winemakers are just people, and let's get to know one another.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Shall I pour us
Yeah.
white?
One.
Yeah.
My turn.
Well, I think it's my turn.
Well, my turn to guess.
Okay.
Your turn to
Okay.
pour, right?
Yes.
Is
Yeah.
that what-
Yep. Correct.
All right. So this next one, as you know, we've mentioned, is a white, obviously from Oregon, but it's not Chardonnay.
Okay. And we didn't put any bounds on like Willamette Valley. It's any Oregon wine, right?
Correct.
Cool.
Yeah, Oregon. Yep.
Okay.
You know, with your master sommelier certification, you should nail this.
Oh well, and I'm not a master yet,
Almost.
yet.
Yes.
So not to okay, the color's a little bit darker. It's like more of a dark straw. So I would say either there's a fair amount of oak or maybe it has a little bit of age to it. Actually, it's a very kind of like delicate, pretty nose. It's like a little bit floral, a little bit of orchard fruit, something like golden apple or Asian pear or something like that. But the color's throwing me off a little bit because I'm not smelling oak on the wine. And you know, traditionally Chardonnay would be the white grape that you would age in Oregon.
Right.
You know, sometimes people put Pinot Blanc here in barrel, and I generally from Pinot Blanc will get those kind of like orchard fruit, slight floral notes. Yeah, it's not. I'm learning a helpful skill in blind tasting is sometimes just be like what it's not. Like,
Yes.
it's not going to be one of those super aromatic grapes like Riesling or which we do see a lot of here. It's definitely not Sauvignon Blanc or Chenin Blanc or one of those big punchy aromatic grapes, which kind of leaves me with those classic. Although I can't say now with Oregon, it's like there's everything from Auxerrois to Aligoté to so many things in that vein.
It is. And, you know, and just kind of talking about Aligoté just a teeny bit and let you process a little bit. I did an interview with the new head winemaker, Anthony at Flaneur.
Oh, yes. I haven't met him yet, but he's wonderful.
He is. He's a great guy. And, you know, I don't get blinded very much.
Yeah.
And, you know, he brought out a blind wine for me. And I'm like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
But I guessed it. I'm like, nope, this is a barrel sample of Aligoté. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
it's.
And now I'm like, I don't know if you're leading the witness here. I'm like, it has, if it were Aligoté, I could see that because it has kind of like some trappings of Chardonnay. Like it's more neutral, has a little bit of that like creaminess to it, which, well, granted, I haven't tried it yet.
Right.
But I could, just based on the nose, maybe guess that this would have gone through malolactic, but it also has this kind of floral note. Let me taste it.
Okay.
There's like a lot of acidity. And there is just like a hint on the finish of that lees. Either it was like aged on the lees. If it was in barrel, it was definitely neutral barrel. I could get a hint of barrel, but it's not over the top.
Yeah.
And it's tough with Oregon now just because based on the experimentation, like, you know, people are growing Malone. I would say for sure it's something that has great texture, was aged on the lees, more of a neutral than an aromatic grape, like citrus, orchard fruit. If I had to guess, probably Aligoté, or does kind of remind me of Malone. Or maybe a Pinot Blanc aged in barrel, but
it's difficult.
It's a tough one.
It is a tough one. Do you want me to reveal?
Sure.
Okay. So are you familiar with Bledsoe McDaniels?
No.
Doubleback. Are you familiar with Doubleback?
No, you're teaching me so much
Oh my
today.
gosh. Okay.
This is how many new Oregon wine, or this might be an older one that I don't know.
Well, so Doubleback, Drew Bledsoe started Doubleback.
Oh, I know Drew Bledsoe's name. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And so Josh McDaniels, became the winemaker at Doubleback.
Uh-huh.
And then they started doing some Oregon projects as well.
Okay.
So then that was Bledsoe McDaniels.
Okay.
And they bought Mimi Castell's vineyard.
The Hopewell Vineyard?
Yeah.
Oh.
And on that vineyard
Is this Shannon?
is a little bit of Chenin Blanc.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That's so fun. Wow, because I've had Mimi's Hopewell Shannon.
Yes.
So did she sold that whole vineyard?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is so fun to try. I'm assuming you don't know. Oh, they're making it up in Milton Freewater. Okay. Do you know if it's in oak?
I don't know those details. No.
It's funny because it does have that very like textural thing, and it does have like crazy acidity.
Right.
But it's like I'm still getting a feel for Oregon Chenin Blanc because I haven't had, especially Willamette Valley.
Right.
There's not much of it being produced.
No.
And this is definitely not as like perfumey as the typical Loire Valley style.
Right.
But I'd be so curious to know like what they're doing in the winery because it's delicious.
It is delicious.
But my brain didn't read Chenin Blanc immediately.
Right.
But it's really good.
Yeah, I had this actually for the first time. Bledsoe McDaniels did a tasting out at Capers Cafe, and that's the first time that I had that.
Wow.
And so the vineyard is called the Cooley Vineyard.
The Cooley Vineyard.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's right here on the side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that is Mimi's old.
They
old
renamed the Hopewell Vineyard.
Yeah.
I would be interested. I think we still have a couple bottles of, I don't know, 2019 or 2020 Shannon from Hopewell.
Yeah.
And I'd be curious to crack it open now.
Let's see what that's.
Yeah, exactly. Because I know she was always doing hers in barrel, I believe. So again, it's just like a different style of Shannon than the textbook one you learn about in Somm school, but it's delicious.
It is delicious. I fell in love with it. I'm like, oh, yes, please.
Yeah.
I will.
I would love to see more Shannon coming out of the Willamette and the Gorge. I mean, Andrew and John's new project, Sacred. Did you taste through those wines?
Not yet.
Really good.
It is on my checklist. I gotta nail Andrew down and be like, all right, come on.
I think they're getting released next month.
Okay.
But the Shannon is actually coming from the Gorge, not the Valley.
Right.
The only Shannon I know of besides this one is the vineyard that Scott Frank sources from in Junction City, which is like really far west.
So in 2020, when Peterson Nedry planted some up at Ridgecrest.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't had that yet.
Yeah, is anyone bottled that yet?
I think I don't know. I'll just say I don't know. I think there was a little bit made, but it wasn't ready, or I don't know.
That's really, really good.
Yeah.
Now there's like warming up a little bit. There's more of that pear coming through.
Okay. Yeah.
A little more fruit. It's great.
Yeah. No, it's always difficult to figure out temperature and like travel time and.
No, it's perfect.
Yeah.
That's a really fun one to try. I would love to see more Shannon in Oregon.
That would be amazing. Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I love about Oregon. There's just, when you dive deeper and deeper, there's so much experimentation going on.
Oh yeah. One, to harken back to that dinner we did last month, that was kind of the whole thesis was like, we so early on hung our hats on Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, but and we make great Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, but we have a lot of, our soils are not identical to Burgundy. Like I get a little frustrated when people don't want to look beyond Pinot Noir and Chardonnay because they're like, no, we're Burgundy. And I'm like, but on a geological level, we're actually very different. We have much more in common with the Auvergne than Burgundy. And the Auvergne is like a ton of Gamay and even some Syrah and Pinot and Chardonnay.
Right.
And even the Loire Valley, there's like a lot of parallels. And so I would just I love seeing the experimentation because we're a young enough region that it's not like we can't do that.
Right.
Like in Burgundy and the Loire, there's a lot of rules saying you can't. And if you want to go against those, you have to bottle as a vin de France. But here it's like you can plant Chenin Blanc.
Yeah.
Put that right on your label, front and center, and people are going to be excited about it. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. So I'm going to go down a small rabbit hole.
Okay.
And there's a chance that this just is a dud. And so I'm just going to throw that out. So not IPNC this year, but IPNC last year. You brought a bottle of a 1988 Oregon Pinot Noir.
Is this the bottle I brought?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. No, I mean like this physical bottle?
Yes.
Wow. This one ended up with you.
Yes.
Wow. Honestly, this for me was like one of the wines of the night.
Why do you think I asked you for the bottle?
And I bought it on a whim. That was the first IPNC I'd ever gone to.
Right.
And I started to hear like, you got to bring something cool. And
Right.
it was at Grand Domain.
Yeah.
And I saw this, and to be honest, it wasn't that expensive. It was like 100 something bucks.
Right.
And I thought for sure, like, this must not be very good. And I asked, who was I talking to there? David. I was like, have you had this? He was like, actually, I have, and it's really good. And we were all so pleasantly surprised.
I saw it on your table, and I was like, can I have a sip?
Yeah.
And then do you remember Jason from the Beaufrere? So I went after I had a sip. I was like, Jason, there's an 1988 Pinot. Come here. And he's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Oof.
Well, 88 is my birth year, and I still can't quite define 88 as a vintage from like around the globe. Like I know it wasn't super great in some places, but
right.
And in Oregon, I'm not honestly all that clear. I mean, they kind of give you a breakdown, but I think overall it was so much cooler then.
Yes.
I don't know now if a almost 36-year-old Oregon Pinot would taste this great.
But it was.
You know, like what was I remember it having, like, it was very delicate, but it still had a ton of fruit. It had a lot of acid, kind of like delicate, grippy tannins.
Yeah, yeah.
Like very mushroomy and earthy and all that, like forest floor thing we like from Oregon Pinot.
Yes, actual details I don't have. All I remember was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And it had so much life. I got to tell everybody that I can about this and like come over and like taste this.
I love that you have this. It's funny because the wine that I brought, I brought a bunch of wine, but the wine I was really excited about this year was also my like wine of the night. And it was an 88 Laurel Glen Cabernet from Sonoma.
Nice.
And we had gotten it from a private collection, or I found it in a private collection, and it's been in my wine cellar. And I was like, oh, this 88 was so great. Maybe I should bring another 88 this year. Yeah. So now I'm like, maybe 88 was a great year.
I think it was a great year. I think it was a great year.
But yeah, sometimes I feel like with Oregon Pinot, with Pinot Noir in general, you're like, I hope this aged how I want it to.
Right. You just never know.
I drank a 1964 DRC last week. The Portland Wine Storage had a locker that they inherited. And it's got some old DRC. And a lot of them, like the fill lines, so much has been lost to evaporation. And they texted me like on a Wednesday afternoon. They're like, we cracked open one of the 64s. And I just drove across the river and tasted it. And then they let me pour some in a deli cup to bring back to Arden so that like Eric and Wesley could try it.
Right. Oh my gosh.
But it was surprisingly good. I was shocked.
It's amazing, like when you take care of it and like, what can happen?
Well, and they had some 67s, and they were like, because they were doing all this research, on vintages, and they said 67 in Burgundy was like over-chaptalized, and according to reviewers, and that those wines probably wouldn't be holding up as well. But sometimes you just get lucky with these old bottles.
You do.
And sometimes they break your heart, but sometimes they're really good.
It's worth the heartbreak.
Yeah.
In finding that good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Shall we try your red?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. I am curious what this is going to be.
I'm curious what you're going to think.
I'm sure it'll be absolutely fantastic.
tea by any chance?
Yeah.
Get your iPad.
So in just looking at it,
I want to say automatically it's a Gamay.
It totally looks like a Gamay.
It does look like a Gamay, yes.
Very purpley.
Very, very purpley, but you know, that's first impression. I can be completely off, which is the humbling thing about a blind tasting. Oh my gosh. Wow. I don't think that's a Gamay. No, that is not a Gamay.
I do love Gamay, and I also would love to see more of that plated.
yes. I'm going to say I have no idea what this is going to be. No clue, but it the scent on it, I don't even know how to describe it, but it is bountiful of just all sorts of just amazingness. I'll just say that. Again, my descriptors aren't the best.
No, this is tough.
Hmm. Hmm. So just going through so many things, right? I'm like,
what are you thinking? Yeah.
I'm like Mourvedre, Mousson, Roussan, and then I'm like, ooh, is it carbonic Gamay?
I think carbonic, like that kind of fresh berry thing that it has going on.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
I see what you're saying. The Marsanne, like when in the Northern Rhone, they'll blend in like Viognier with Syrah. It almost has that kind of lifted, even though it's a red, that kind of like lifted aromatic thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I and this is what I love about Oregon. I have absolutely zero idea what this is, and this is rabbit holes just to go down. But what else? I'm going to take a gander and say it's more Southern Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I don't know. It's light, right? So it's not like your heavy reds, not at all. It's very light, refreshing. So maybe it's more up in the gorge, and it is definitely different.
It's like a little bit of tannin to it.
A little bit, but not a whole. Yeah.
You might hate me when I reveal.
No, I wouldn't know. That is impossible.
Well, okay, so I will say the winemaker, when the reason I wanted to bring this is because I was curious how you would react in a blind tasting. So she told the story that she wanted to make this wine because she tasted something similar at a blind tasting.
Right.
And people were really upset when it was revealed what it was. People were thinking that it was like French Pinot Noir. This is Oregon blueberry wine from Kelly Fox.
Oh my gosh.
And I know I probably totally broke the rules on this.
No.
She went to our wine dinner, and hearing her tell that story, she makes this exactly like her Pinot Noir.
Wow.
Like she macerates it. She ferments it all the way dry. It's 12.5% alcohol.
Right.
She ages it in French oak barrels, like does all the same amount of punch downs, like treats it like a Pinot Noir.
Right.
But it's 100% like Oregon blueberries.
Oh my gosh.
And I was just, people loved it so much. And of course, like, is blueberry wine real wine? I'm sure not really, but I just think it is really emblematic of like the creativity that's happening in Oregon right now.
I agree.
Especially in very skilled hands.
Right.
You
Wow.
know? Like, I think it passes for wine.
It definitely passes for wine. I mean, here I am, I'm looking like, it looks like a Gamay, and like, I'm trying to tick off all the boxes, and I couldn't. No.
I was really curious if you were going to say blueberries.
No.
Yeah.
I would not. Yeah.
I think if I was blind tasting this, I probably would have said Gamay, like, or carbonic Pinot Meunier or something like that, you know?
Yes.
Because it's light in body, and I think you could pour this for people, and it would pass for it. But another reason that I got excited that she was making this, one of my first kind of like winemakers that I befriended in California is a very classic winemaker named Michael Terrian. He was the winemaker for Hansel for many years. He has his own label called Obsidian Ridge, which is like high elevation cab from Red Hill Lake County.
Right.
But a couple of years ago, he started going home to Maine in the summer and making blueberry wine. And he's like, you know, old school Napa based winemaker, but he was making method champenoise, you know, like long lees aging, like all the things, but out of like wild Maine blueberries. And I thought it was so delicious. And I just thought it was so cool seeing like a really skilled winemaker do something totally off the wall. And when Kelly said she was making it, it was the first time I'd seen it done here. And I was like, I have to try it.
No, it's amazing. I think that would be fun to pour like at a party.
Yep.
That people know their wine.
Yep.
And then just like, just let the discussion happen.
Exactly.
Yes.
Mess with people.
Well, yeah, but like it's
in a thoughtful way, you know?
In a very thoughtful way. Engage the brain. It's like, what in the heck am I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like, have you ever blind tasted out of those black glasses?
Not yet.
They're fun.
Yeah,
I finally bought a set for Arden, so if you come into Arden, I'll pour something for
Okay.
you. But like when you actually can't see, and especially if it's like cellar temp, it's shocking how much your brain can't even tell if it's a white or a red sometimes.
Right, because you can't see the color at all.
It totally throws you off.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah.
That would be fun. So this year for IPNC, I was a moderator for Kaleidoscope of Pinot.
Oh, cool.
And I had 5 winemakers. I had Patrick from Dominio 4.
Patrick.
I had Jean-Michel from Del Rio.
Yep.
Josh McDaniels from Butzel McDaniel. I had Maggie Harrison from Antigua Terra. That was 4, wasn't it? There's one more. Oh no.
Another local person?
Well, no, my
Kaleidoscope.
It's okay. Anyway, the route that I was going down was the first time that I actually. No,
Okay.
no, it wasn't Raj. Todd Alexander from.
Is he one of the South African guys?
No, he's local. He. Oh my gosh, this is awful. I need to like cut all of this because this is embarrassing.
It's not from Long Play. That's Todd. Someone.
Yeah. No. He has a couple 100-point wines that he's done.
Oh wow.
So I mean.
But is it like a wholesale brand or like a direct to consumer brand?
Direct to consumer brand.
Oh, then.
Yeah.
Often I'm not as up on those because we just don't see them in the restaurant world.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I probably maybe would have heard of it.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. Force majeure.
Oh, force majeure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course.
I'm like it just like I gotta go through all that. So
I've not met him, but I know his wines are very highly regarded.
Yes, they are. But where I was going was that was my first time I actually got to interact with Maggie Harrison. Oh, she is. I love her.
Rip.
Yes, she is. And before that, I actually went out to, it was Keeler Estate, now Antigua Terra. I did the lunch tasting that's out there. My gosh, talk about a permanent home that's just amazing.
Yeah, we just took we did like a sales contest where the servers were competing against themselves to sell Oregon wine. Right. And everyone that did it, we took them out and did the tasting at the Barrel Hall. And we didn't do the full lunch, but we did whatever the step down was. It was still a lot of food, and I think they kind of spoiled us with extra wines. We tried to look at wines. But Maggie's wines were actually some of the first Oregon wines that I sold, because when I was a somm in LA, the selection of Oregon wines is smaller, and in light of now living in Oregon, kind of eclectic. Like there's a lot of Belpont there. There was a lot of this long play wine, which I never see up here, but I
Right.
sold a lot of down there. And I sold a lot of Antigua Terra, because people got money for that down there.
Yeah.
And so even though I grew up in the Willamette Valley, I remember like the year after I became a somm, and I was like 25, and I came home to visit, and it was the first time I had gone out to where I grew up through the eyes of visiting winemakers.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to Belpont and Antigua Terra. And at the time, she didn't have, obviously the barrel hall wasn't there, but she didn't even have the black walnut or the Red Hills Dundee Market. Like it was all just at the winery, right in Dundee.
Right.
And I fell in love with her immediately. Like she's just this you've met her, very ethereal, kind of like lives on a different plane of existence than the rest of us boring humans, and just like sees and smells things that we don't. But she's also just like so smart, and
Oh my gosh.
so she's been very intelligent and like thoughtful and meticulous in how she's built that brand,
Yes.
clearly based on how successful it is.
Yeah.
But I think her like dreaminess comes out in that tasting room. Like you go in and it's like you're entering another world.
Yeah, and like just that little hallway,
Yep.
It's almost like going into a totally different dimension.
You go in and it's all just candles and dried flowers and like, beautiful furniture and like your own little cashmere blanket and
Yeah.
the food. I remember like the first dish they brought out, I wasn't paying attention. For the longest time, I just thought it was a flower arrangement. And then I realized it was crudité. It was like this bowl of crudité with like flowers and vegetables that had just been pulled from the garden. And
Right.
it literally looked like a table arrangement. I was like, oh, we're eating that?
I don't want to eat it. Well, so for the lunch, there was so much food. Like we didn't eat breakfast and we didn't eat anything afterwards.
Yeah.
But for the final course, they brought out a whole freaking chicken.
Wow, a whole chicken?
Everything.
Oh my gosh.
The whole chicken. Neck,
Wow.
head, feet, everything.
That's incredible.
It was incredible.
Did you, I'm assuming you did the tasting where you try their wines alongside
Correct.
all
Yeah.
the other great wines of the
Yeah.
world.
Yes.
And she's done that from like day one, which I just thought was so forward thinking and so like confident,
Yeah, like where do you get that sort of idea from?
I know. You're like, oh, here's my wine and it's great, but like let me pour it next to the greatest Pinot Noir on the planet, the greatest Cab Franc on the planet,
Exactly. Being a programmer, launching a program out into the world, I'm like, ooh, right, I get all nervous, but to have the gusto
Yeah.
to be like, boom, oof.
I know. I have become friends with one of the gals who like helps run the hospitality program. And I'm like, okay, I'm really happy running my own business, but it would be really cool to go work there for a month. Just hearing
Oh yeah.
what they get to taste is insane. I mean, you know about their wine club,
Right.
and we actually joined it as I signed us up as a team because those wines are so allocated, like that. They have allocations to every great wine in the world, essentially.
Right.
And they just have a cellar stocked with them. And if you join their wine club, you're not even necessarily getting Antigua Terra wines, you're getting those allocated wines. And for a restaurant like Arden, when you get an allocation like that, you have to take often a full case or at least a 6-pack. And when each wine is $1,000 wholesale or more,
Right.
that's really hard for a small restaurant to justify. And so we don't often get allocations like that.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, this is a special way that the plan is we get our first pickup in October and we want to open 2 bottles a month.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone gets to try them and then we get to talk about them and maybe try other wines from those regions. But when else are you going to get to have a Le Puy or a Pustor, or it's really special.
It is special. I was getting ready to go out to Paris.
Yeah.
And I talked to Katie, let her know, and she's like, "Oh, here are some growers Champagne that you should go visit." And I'm like, just like
Salon.
yeah, just so many, just like off the tip of her tongue.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah, they drink better than probably anyone in Oregon right now, if I had to guess.
Probably so. Yes. I mean, maybe Ron at Okta might.
Yes. That would
maybe
give them a run for their money.
Yes, I'm sure. Yes. Oh, have you heard of Eric Berg at Ricochet?
Yes. I have met him in passing at Arden. We've had his wines at Arden. What did we have? I'm blanking out on what exactly we had. I don't know him well, but I've just met him
Okay.
in passing and tasting the wines.
And the reason I mention it, right? I'm in a book group that we're actually later tonight. We're finishing up the very last Cormac McCarthy book, Stella Maris.
I haven't read it yet, but Eric and I love Cormac McCarthy.
Yes.
And so I bought the new one and I haven't read it yet.
Oh my gosh.
Is it great?
Have you read The Passenger yet?
No.
Okay.
No, I haven't read either one because it's 2 parts, right?
Right. It's 2 parts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Just got it.
yeah, no, Eric, high school teacher, AP English, he had his class read The Road.
Yeah.
And every time I finish a Cormac McCarthy book, I have to open up a bottle of Ricochet and pay my tribute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
All the Pretty Horses is like one of my favorite books.
Yeah.
And The Road, and I mean Blood Meridian is a tough read,
Oof,
but
yeah.
yeah, and that was it's funny, that was one of the things our chef Eric and I bonded over, that we both really love Cormac McCarthy, and he just passed away last year.
Yeah.
But no, do you recommend both of these?
So I didn't get to go to the book group when they did The Passenger,
Mhm.
so I didn't read The Passenger.
Okay.
So I've read the last one first,
Mhm.
and I'm like, oh my God, I love this.
Oh, cool.
I loved the Stella Maris,
Mhm.
and now I'm like, all right, I need some backstory.
Yeah.
So now I'm about halfway through The Passenger, and I loved Stella Maris.
Cool.
Like, there's a pace to it, and if you're a little brainiac,
Yeah.
there's just so many like little nerdy tidbits in there. And like the research that Cormac McCarthy had to do for that just blows my mind.
Is it as bleak as some of his other books? I think I was dragging my feet a little bit ever since the pandemic. I've just been like wary of like heavy material or heavy like content. Like I used to watch all these very gritty shows, and ever since the pandemic, I'm like, give me fluff. My brain needs fluff.
Yeah.
So, I'll get there.
Bleak. I wouldn't say bleak. Maybe.
A little bit bleak.
Well, the very last page, there might be some bleakness there, but that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. You're inspiring me.
I will say, if you follow a pattern of Cormac McCarthy books, I didn't pick up on this, so I have no credit.
Yeah.
But like his main characters, you never pick up on the fact of how they died. Right?
Interesting.
There is, he has all this bloody, gruesome stuff of all these other people that die, but his main characters, you never are given that detail.
Oh, I'm gonna have to like go back and think about that now.
Well, just think about No Country for Old Men, right?
I know, because he's walking around murdering people, but it's
well, yeah, but like the cowboy,
the Tommy Lee Jones guy.
Well,
it's been so long since
the mustache guy that found the money, right?
Yeah.
Not Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah.
But he died.
Not Javier Bardem. Yes, Javier Bardem, the bad guy.
No, not the bad guy.
Yeah.
So when you first start off with No Country for Old Men, there's a guy with his rifle, and he's shooting at.
Yeah.
Josh Brolin.
Josh Brolin, yes. That's right. Okay. You're giving me like a movie marathon mission.
Of course. That's what I do.
And I'll have to get some Ricochet wine to enjoy along with it.
Exactly. Yes.
That's awesome.
All right. We got one more wine.
Cool.
Okay.
Somehow I'm getting Pinot.
Well, it's doing the traditional, right?
Yeah, I've been having the conversation. I think I wrote my newsletter this week about it, how it's just getting harder and harder to blind taste Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Not in that you can't figure out what they are, but that
Right.
we're figuring out where they're from is getting increasingly more difficult. Like with climate shifting, Burgundy is getting a whole lot warmer. And what we like think of as traditional Burgundian Pinot and Chardonnay,
Right.
the last couple times I blind tasted it, I've thought it was New World. And I think Oregon and California have become kind of wild cards because we have so much more freedom now with where we can plant. We're like, oh, we'll
Right.
plant further towards the Coast Range, higher up, closer to Van Duzer.
Right.
Whereas in Burgundy, you can't just pick up and move around cruise site.
No, you cannot. But it's fun. It's all of it. I mean, Eola, Amity Hills, Dundee, Chehalem Mountains. I mean, all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all the new, I can't even keep up with all the new ABAs.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was out at a winery called Ghost Hill, kind of close out to Soder, and come to find out, oh my gosh, they're trying to create a new AVA out there called Savannah Ridge.
Savannah, like right by, just outside of Carlton?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know when that will happen, but I know that they're working on it.
Just add it to the list. One more for us to all remember.
Exactly.
Okay, so this definitely looks like it has some age to it. Just kind of that coppery fading out to the rim.
Yeah.
A little bit of sediment in there. Definitely less of the like punchy primary fruit that you get when Pinot's young, and a lot more of that iron, terracotta, kind of like spicy. You definitely get like the woodsy forest floor thing,
Right.
But there is still some like fresh red fruit. But that also leads me to think it's like an older, obviously, wine because it tastes like it came from probably a cooler year. If there's still this almost kind of like huckleberry red fruit hanging on.
Right.
Let's taste it. Still a lot of acid. More fruit, I feel like, on the palate than there was on the nose. And a lot of that, yeah, like quintessential for me, like maybe Dundee Hills, like that jory spice of the red fruit.
Right.
A little bit of baking spice. There's still tannin there, but it's not over the top. It's always hard with tannin for me on old wines because I'm like, this could have had more oak than maybe we would use now, and that maybe helped it age. But it doesn't read now as overly oaked by any means. But it tastes really balanced. Like,
right.
There's a lot of fruit, there's a lot of acid, there's just enough tannin. I mean, I think this is probably at least 15 years old, if not older. And I don't know, for some reason I'm circling around Dundee just because I associate the Dundee Hills with that kind of classic red fruit. Whereas for me, Eula Amity, it always smells a little darker and like crunchier or something.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
And Chehalem Mountains is always like a little more delicate and perfumed. Maybe this is Chehalem Mountains, but I feel like it definitely had to have some oomph to get it this far. And part of me was like, oh, it could be like John Paul Cameron, but I don't think there's enough of that reduction that he likes to use on the nose,
Right.
for Clos Electrique.
Yeah.
But maybe this is Chehalem Mountain. What year are we in? 2024? If I had to guess, it would probably be like in the early aughts or something. Um, like 2007 or something like that. Um, I'm gonna guess like 2007. I'm like, who was making wine then? I mean, there was a handful, but could be something really classic like Irie, or if it was Chehalem Mountain, it could be like Ponzi, or I don't know,
Adelstein, maybe.
or Adelsheim.
Yeah.
Adelsheim. Okay. Yeah. What's the vintage? Let's see.
So it's a 2013
2013. Okay.
Dundee Hills Dusky
Oh,
Goose.
it's Dusky Goose, and it is Dundee Hills, but it's 2015. Okay.
Yeah.
It's funny. When I was working at Paley's Place, I worked at Paley's Place for 1 year.
Mhm.
When I moved back from LA, and we were in the process of opening Thelonious, and that was in 2016. And I had been a wine buyer in California, but I just got a job like waiting tables because we were just putting all our money and energy into building inventory at Thelonious. So
Right.
I worked at Paley's Place, and I worked the opening of this tasting room.
Oh,
And so I think this was their first vintage?
Oh, I don't know.
If it's not, then it was very close to.
Yeah, it could be close. I don't know.
And that makes sense in terms of like the acid, and probably thinking it was a little older because 2013 was such a weird, like pretty cool, wet, very wet, kind of night
Torrential
year.
downpours.
Yes.
Yes.
And like people's fruit looked awful, but I love how the wines have aged.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like they read as like more delicate than the big voluptuous 2014s and 2012s, you know?
Yeah.
I had a 2013 Pinot last night from, oh my gosh, I went to Artigiano.
Mhm.
Have you been to Artigiano?
I have not. No.
Josh Chang, who photographs like every food and wine event, and he used to be the rep for Lemma, so he's a wine guy, but
Right.
he does it's like essentially like an Italian food truck cart,
Okay.
but they have a whole dining space, and
Right.
it's a set price, and they just pour wine and bring food out
Oh,
until you say stop, and he pulls everything out of his cellar. And he poured us so much wine that I feel awful for not remembering who the producer was, but it was 2013 Dundee Hills Oregon Pinot.
oh,
And so it's cool to taste these back to back because
right.
they've both aged so well.
Yeah.
And I usually think of Dusky Goose as like they definitely do use oak, like more in that big plush kind of riper style,
Right.
but that allows that use of oak, like allows the wines to age really well.
Agreed.
You know?
Agreed. Yeah. And Lynn Pinarash, I mean, come on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Is she still the winemaker there?
She is not.
Okay.
A couple years ago.
I know when Kendall Jackson bought Penner
Right.
she had like a separation eventually, but I didn't know how that affected Dusky Goose.
Yeah. So, Kate, Ayres,
Mhm.
took over for Lynn
Okay.
at Pinarash.
Okay.
And then Kate has a husband whose name is Hans Vandel,
Okay.
who's also a winemaker. And he is making the wines now at Dusky Goose.
Cool. Yeah, I try to always be very like judicious as a somm because sure I tend to go for like lighter, leaner, brighter, higher acid, less oak styles of wine in general.
Right.
But so many people, like more people, the majority of people like kind of bigger, riper, often more oaked styles, for better, for worse.
Yep.
And I will say, like, for me, I think the time and a place for those is just making sure you're drinking them at the proper age. Because if you have them right out of the gate, like they're out of balance for me.
I'm right there with you.
And the alcohol is too intense. Like there's too much tannin. It's just too much.
Right.
But if you give them 5 or 11 years, like they can become really, really beautiful.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree.
That was one of the big, when we did this roundtable thing with Beaufrere. We tasted 92, 02, 12, and 22. And it was fascinating to see like how the wines had aged. In 92, Mike was and Mike's kept meticulous notes. Like he had his log book and he could tell us exactly how he made the wine, when he picked it, what the bricks were, like everything. And in 92, he was like, we were doing, tons of extraction, tons of punch downs, long macerations, picked it ripe, like 100% new oak. And their wine style has just completely reversed since then. But the 92 was showing, it was like it was made yesterday because of all that oak and all that added tannin from all that extraction.
Right.
Gave it the structure to come 40 years later.
Right.
Or 30 years later.
Yeah.
And it was incredibly delicious.
Yeah, it is amazing. And I honestly think winemakers have a certain amount of magic to be able to say, okay, I'm going to do this. And in 30, 40, 50 years, it's still gorgeous.
Yeah. And it's tough because in this market, like most winemakers don't have the luxury of just saying like, I'll sit on this for 20 years. And most buyers don't have the luxury of saying,
Right.
I'll wait 20 years to drink this.
Right. No, you don't.
So we're drinking these wines that for me, I'm like, just give it a couple more years.
Yes.
And we've started trying to do that at Arden. Finally, a couple years ago, we got a wine locker. And so we're at least, buying current wines, putting them in there just at least for a couple years.
Exactly.
Because a couple years is better than
yes.
1
Than
year.
nothing. Yes, I agree.
No.
So I always do research on everybody, right? And one of the themes that I kind of found for you is overachieving is just in your blood, right? You got into NYU's acting program. Arden is a great success. I used to rent some wine glasses. And this last time that I went to get those glasses, it's now called Arden Event Collective.
That is not us.
Oh.
And I'm upset because they changed their name to Arden and people are very confused.
Okay, well, I will take that.
Say that I had taken on a catering brand too, but no, I have not.
Okay. Well, see, that's what I get for assuming.
To my overachievement.
Well, I was just kind of curious, what other things do you have in the works that you're going to conquer?
Well, during the pandemic, my big takeaway was that there's a big market of people who want to learn more about wine, but who aren't wine professionals, they're just wine drinkers.
Right.
And because I was doing these virtual live streamed wine tastings every week for 2 years, I was like, wow, I really enjoy talking about wine and tasting wine with people and like educating. But I don't, it's almost like I need to think of a word that combines education and entertainment because I like to think that's kind of like my brand on it.
Right.
Because I feel like it melds the two worlds for me of acting and entertaining and speaking to people and then wine. And so I developed shot, produced, and released a digital wine course last year called 7 Day Sommelier that I'm really proud of. And I'm still trying to figure out how to like market that to the world.
Right.
And I would love to kind of keep going in that direction. But the whole kind of platform I have, Raise the Glass, is all geared towards like education and entertainment. And my ultimate dream would be to have a wine travel TV show, kind of a la Anthony Bourdain, but for wine.
Right.
And I actually shot a pilot for it during the pandemic. One more project that was really fun. And I'm still trying to figure out, like, it's tough with those shows because you're like, okay, I have to wait for someone in Hollywood potentially to like green light it for me, or do I just bootstrap it and like take 3 months and go travel the world and shoot it on my own dime and sell it and put it on YouTube, and like that's an option too.
Right.
But I'm kind of just trying to focus on building the platform now. I do have something fun in the works that I don't think I can talk about yet, but that should be announced soon. That's kind of along the same vein.
That would be fun.
And that's in collaboration with a team in Portland. And then this is just my own personal project, but I have been writing a screenplay for the last 3 years.
Oh.
That is adapting my favorite Shakespeare play, Twelfth Night in Oregon Wine Country. And I would love to shoot that in the next year or two. And I just read that out loud with a group of actor friends last week for the first time. And I want to do a reading in wine country. But I just think it'd be so fun. I'm like, we're due for another Sideways, right?
Yes, we are.
And I feel like Oregon would be great for that.
That would be great.
Yeah. So that is what I would love to make happen. I think I mentioned before we started recording, but I still do acting projects when I can, and I ended up getting to shoot a full-length feature last year.
Yes.
It was a very indie bootstrapped project here, but it was a full feature, and that experience, I was like, oh, I could do this.
Yeah.
Because I've always done short films. I've produced and written short films, but doing a full feature was always this like, oh, that's too hard.
Right.
I'm like, no, we could do it.
That's great. Are you able to say the name of the full feature?
It's called Late Harvest.
Okay.
But it's an adaptation of Twelfth Night, and it kind of plays with gender roles in the modern era,
Right.
which is a very hot topic now,
It is a very hot topic. Yeah.
because that plays about her dressing up like a boy, and it's a whole love triangle, and but it's all set. She's kind of like where she ends up is this little town
Nice.
in Willamette Valley, and she gets a job at a winery, and she's working for, instead of Duke Orsino, she's working at Fort Warren Duke at Duke Cellars. So it's there's like
Yeah.
Easter eggs for wine nerds and Shakespeare nerds.
That's awesome.
And I'm still like perfecting it, and I'm getting feedback from people, but yeah, I would love to make that happen.
I can't wait to see it.
I
Out in
hope
the
it'll be
wild.
soon.
Yes. No, that would be great.
You know anyone who wants to fund it, you just send them my way.
I will see what I can do.
But yeah,
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I have some rapid fire questions for you, and I'll get you out of here.
cool.
So normally I ask this favorite artist during harvest, but like when you're just like in the groove, like
Mhm.
getting stuff done, who are you listening to?
It's funny, the first artist that popped to mind is not even my favorite artist, but I would say he's Arden's favorite artist, Tommy Guerrero.
Okay.
Eric brought Tommy Guerrero vibes with him, but when we're at Arden, there's always music playing, and Tommy Guerrero is like what the kitchen puts on when they're like in flow state. And Eric loves him, and he was a professional skateboarder turned musician,
Okay.
and he just has very like vibey, rhythmic. You can have it on in the background. It's like just enough energy. And
Okay.
if the joke is Eric started at Arden in July, and by December he was already our most played Spotify artist.
That's
So
awesome.
I'll say Tommy Guerrero.
Okay. Your favorite indulgent food?
Ooh, something with seafood. I would say, gosh, or actually, you know what? Tartare.
Okay.
And it's funny because I don't really eat much meat at all.
Mhm.
But if I do eat meat, like I'm never going to order a steak, but if there's a steak tartare on the menu, I have to order it.
Yeah. I don't blame you. If you could choose a superpower, what would it be?
Flying, I think for sure.
Okay. And then the last book you read.
The last book I read was actually, where is it? It was called The Paris Novel by
Okay.
Ruth Reichl. And I went to Cherry Bomb this year, which is like a women in food, and Cherry Bomb's a magazine for women in food and wine, and they
Yep.
do a summit in New York. And I went this year with a bunch of Portland women, and Ruth was one of the keynote speakers, and she's written a lot of food memoirs. She was like the food editor. I feel bad that I don't know her, like, she wrote the one about plums. What was it called?
I don't feel so bad now
Noticed,
when
I know.
I was blanking on names and everything earlier.
Oh, she wrote, she was the former editor-in-chief of Gourmet, the restaurant critic for the New York Times, for LA Times. She's gotten 6 James Beard Awards, but this was her first novel. And she said she just wanted to like challenge herself to write a novel. And it's about a girl who always like didn't indulge in anything sensory, like thought clothes were frivolous and didn't like food or wine.
Right.
And then she goes to Paris and like falls in love with it all. And it's like her discovering the joy of food and wine. So it's
That's
a
amazing.
good summer read for anyone who likes
Yeah.
food and wine.
That is wonderful. Well, that is all that I have.
Thank you.
Yes. No, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This was really fun.
Yes. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining me on this flavorful voyage through the world of wine on the Weinnotes Podcast. I've been your host and guide, AJ Weinzettel, and it's been an absolute pleasure sharing these captivating stories with you. But alas, like the last sip of a fine vintage, our time together must end. But don't fret, my wine-loving friend. The cellar doors of the Weinnotes Podcast will always remain open, waiting for you to return and explore new conversations, stories, and musings from the captivating people behind the magical world of wine. Before you go, hit that subscribe button on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, and don't forget to leave a sparkling 5-star review to help spread the word. Until our glasses clink again, remember to savor life's moments and let the spirit of wine and camaraderie linger on your palate. Cheers, and as always, may your wine glass be full, your heart be light, and your journey be delight.